Thank you for coming in early. It makes things easier for me to fire you. That was the first thing I heard on Monday morning, before I even took my first sip of coffee. Troy, the CEO, founder, and self proclaimed inspirational leader, said it with the same tone you'd use to order breakfast. There was no guilt in his voice, not even a pause. The blue light from his laptop screen lit up his face. Next to him was an open file named Freelink Pitch Deck in PDF format. I knew that file. And so did he. It was the presentation I had sent to a small investor last week. And no, it had nothing to do with this company. We value transparency here, Troy said, his tone as flat as a barcode scanner. But sending out your own pitch while still working here doesn't sound very loyal, does it? Loyal. He really used that word, as if I were serving in the army, not working in marketing for a 12-person startup where I handled design, advertising, and sometimes made coffee because, as he liked to say, our team is flexible. I asked if he had read my email. He shrugged. The IT department found it through your company account, he said. Impressive. The company website had been down for 2 months, yet somehow they could read private emails instantly. Who did you send it to? He asked. An investor. On my own time. It's not connected to the company. You don't see that as a conflict of interest? I don't. But I guess you do. The air in the room felt heavy, filled with the plastic smell of chairs, and something worse, fake morality. Troy pulled out a white envelope from his drawer. Termination letter. Effective immediately. It will disable your account in 10 minutes. Good, I said. Give me 8 to log out of Spotify. He didn't laugh. People who believe they're saving the world through mission statements rarely have a sense of humor. He pushed the envelope toward me. Security will help you pack your things. How thoughtful, I said. I've never been great at goodbyes anyway. If being fired is the biggest shock of someone's life, then they've never spent 6 years in a place where dedication means working weekends and never asking for a raise. I stood up, fixed my jacket, and smiled the most polished PR smile I had. Thank you for being direct, I said. It's a bit early, but perfect timing. Gives me more hours to finish my demo. He blinked once, like his brain was buffering, unsure why I wasn't falling apart. I walked out. The office fell silent. Curious eyes peeked over monitors. When the security guard arrived, I whispered, "Can you help me carry this plant? It survived 3 generations of interns." He chuckled. At least someone in this building was still human. I passed by the massive wall with the company slogan in bold letters: Innovate, disrupt, lead. Yeah, I just innovated, just not here. I sat in the lobby, the envelope resting on my lap. 6 years of work, hundreds of campaigns, and countless late nights, all reduced to 4 words in Times New Roman: termination of employment. A coworker passed by and whispered, "You okay?" Better than Troy, I said. Now he'll have to send the team's birthday emails himself. A few people laughed quietly, just enough that the cameras wouldn't pick it up. I didn't blame them. In this place, even laughter needed permission. I walked out. Troy was standing at the coffee counter, his back to me. I raised my empty cup. "Cheers, boss." He didn't turn around. Fine. I hated forced endings anyway. Outside, the Texas sun burned against the pavement. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of dust, heat, freedom, and the faint smoke of a system that had just burned 6 years of my life. A bitter but sharp thought crossed my mind. So, creating something after hours counts as treason now. You learn something new every day. I texted my best friend. Emily. Got fired. Olivia. What? Why? Emily. For being too good. Somewhere else. She called right away, furious. I laughed, looking at my box of things. Some plants, a mug that said, "We're a family," and a thank you card from a client last year. Family, right. The kind that hires security to walk you out. I opened my car trunk and placed the box inside. Between the papers was a small USB drive, the one that held the Freelink code, my late-night creation, my real work. They could take my job. They couldn't take my idea. I started the car and turned on the radio. Queen was playing Don't Stop Me Now. "You're right, Freddie," I said. "Nobody's stopping me now." The building shrank in the rearview mirror. Inside, Troy was probably typing an internal email. We've parted ways with an employee who wasn't aligned with our company culture. Sure. If company culture means working yourself invisible so others can take the credit, then yes, I didn't fit in. What about you? Have you ever been called disloyal just for wanting to grow? Maybe you've been fired for outgrowing them too. Tell me your story, and let me know where you're watching from. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, people would notice. Spoiler alert, they don't. They only notice when you forget to send a file or call in sick. When you save a project at 2 in the morning, someone else gets the flowers the next day. I joined the company when I was 26, hair still long and full of belief that the word startup meant a place where ideas mattered. In reality, it was a place where everything burned constantly: deadlines, energy, and sometimes paychecks. On my first day, I still remember Troy shaking my hand firmly and saying, "Here we have no hierarchy. Everyone has a voice." It sounded like a promise. Later, I learned that no hierarchy meant no promotions. And everyone has a voice means everyone can talk, but no one listens. I quickly became the firefighter of the marketing department, the kind of employee whose name is called first whenever something goes wrong. When a project ran late, I stayed. When a client got angry, I calmed them down. When someone quit, I took their workload. I used to call that teamwork. Now I know it's called the inability to say no. On my third birthday at the company, I got an email from HR titled, "Congratulations to our March birthdays." My name wasn't on the list. I replied, half joking, half serious, "Guess the system forgot me." HR responded with a single thumbs up emoji. That was it. That emoji might have been the most official acknowledgement I ever received, even more than the 3 times I emailed about a salary adjustment later on. The first time, I sent a polite message with a performance summary, KPIs, and a market comparison. Troy replied, "Thank you for your effort. Let's revisit this after next quarter." Next quarter. 1 quarter, 2 quarters, then 6. I eventually realized that his quarter meant infinity. The second time, I kept it short. "I think it's time to adjust my salary to match the market." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. Not a single word more. The third time, I didn't attach data or reports. I simply asked, "Could you please explain why my salary review hasn't been considered?" No one replied. I thought the email had failed to send. It hadn't. I had just expired. The irony was that I was the one who created the company-wide presentation titled "The Culture of Gratitude." That day, Troy stood on stage in front of 50 people, opened the slides I had designed, and said proudly, "At Harbor Point, we value every small effort." I sat in the front row, advancing the slides, trying not to laugh. Every small effort, I thought. Like the thumbs up he sent me the day before. After that meeting, Troy patted my shoulder. "Emily, that presentation was wonderful. You're the heart of this culture. Yes, the heart." Meanwhile, the rest of me was staying until 10 at night to finish the campaign he would later take credit for. A year later, the company held an internal event with an Employee Dedication Award. I was nominated, and the winner was Jess, the summer Goth marketing intern, for bringing positive energy and joy every morning. Right. And I brought deadlines and caffeine, apparently less joyful. After the ceremony, Troy messaged me, "Don't be disappointed, Emily. You're the most stable person on the team. You don't need a title to prove it." Stable. That word sounds a lot like old, but still functioning. In the years that followed, I did nearly everything the company needed: writing proposals, designing, training new hires, and even managing contracts when accounting went on maternity leave. No one asked me to. I volunteered, because in my head, doing more meant being seen. But the company didn't see me. They only saw me when something broke. The only time I was publicly acknowledged was during a meeting when Troy announced quarterly revenue had increased by 30%. He said, "Thanks to the efforts of the entire team." I remember laughing quietly. The entire team. A polite way to avoid naming the person who actually did the work. By my 6th birthday at the company, I wasn't expecting gifts anymore. Just maybe a small cake. That afternoon, Jess, the same intern, now a full-time employee, walked into the meeting room holding a big cake, smiling brightly. "Cake for Troy," she said. "It's the boss's birthday today." Everyone clapped, took pictures, and posted them on the company intranet with the tag, "Our Leader, Our Light." I stood in the back, watching as they cut the three-tier cake. No one remembered it was my birthday, too. Later that day, Troy sent a company-wide email thanking everyone for making his day special. I looked at my inbox, then sent myself an email. Subject: Happy birthday, Emily. Reminder to self: stop waiting for people to remember. I never deleted that email. The day I was fired, it was still sitting in my drafts. Like me, always waiting for a reply that never came. When I left the company, I thought back on those 6 years. Not with anger, but with a quiet smile. Funny how I had spent half my 20s helping the company build a culture of gratitude only to receive silence as my reward. And strangely enough, when I walked out of that building, I didn't feel empty. I felt lighter, like I had finally clocked out from a 6-year overtime shift. A year before I was fired, I accidentally discovered that my company was burning money. Not a metaphor. Literally, $312,480. That was the amount lost because of a single data entry mistake in the contract system. It started when Client a software firm in Seattle, emailed to ask about their March invoice. I opened the CRM to check and saw their contract marked as expired since February, even though they had kept paying every month. I thought it was just a small glitch. But when I dug deeper, I realized more than 20 renewal contracts sent through email had never been updated in the system. In other words, for 3 straight months, we had been missing over $300,000 in revenue, and no one had noticed. I printed out the Excel sheet, went to Troy's office, and showed him everything, thinking he would appreciate my initiative and sense of responsibility. Wrong. Completely wrong. He looked up and said slowly, "Emily, that's not part of your job description. Don't worry about technical matters." I stood there trying to process what I had just heard. Not part of your job description, the magic phrase used by people who believe that negligence is a leadership skill. I asked again, "But this error affects the quarterly report. If we don't fix it, revenue will be off by hundreds of thousands." He nodded, calm as if I had mentioned the weather. "Sure, let it handle it. And if they're busy, we'll hire a freelancer." I almost laughed. Hire a freelancer to patch a problem our own team caused, just because the boss didn't want an employee to step outside her role. That afternoon, I received an email thanking me. The last line read, "Currently, no budget allocated for resolution." I looked at the number 312,480 in my Excel sheet, then reread that sentence twice, hoping it would turn into a joke. That night, I opened my laptop, one hand holding a glass of wine, the other typing into Google. No code contract management app builder. If no one would fix it, I would. Not because I wanted credit, but because I couldn't stand watching stupidity repeat itself. I signed up for a no-code platform and created a new project. Project name, Freelink. I chose it because it sounded like freedom and also like freelancing. Freedom to do it myself. That felt right. I didn't know how to code, but I understood logic. If a contract expires while a client keeps paying, the system should alert you. And if no one else would build that system, then I would. I watched tutorial videos, copied a few formulas, guessed the rest. The classic startup way. By 3 in the morning, I had built a basic contract input screen. It was ugly, fonts broken, but it worked. I looked at it and smiled. Not bad, Emily. Not pretty, but at least it has a brain. A week later, I had a working MVE, a small app that could automatically receive contracts, renew them by actual date, and alert users before any revenue slipped through. I tested it with real data. It worked perfectly. I took a screenshot and emailed Troy. I think I just fixed the $300,000 bug that the company didn't have the budget to fix. 3 hours later, he replied, "Good job, Emily, but next time, let us know before working outside your assigned scope." I laughed. Assigned scope, the invisible fence built around every employee to make sure no one dares to do anything beyond what's allowed. I thought to myself, if creativity lies outside the assigned scope, then I must be guilty of creative misconduct. I didn't touch Freelink again. I knew the pattern. Submit an idea, they say they'll evaluate it, then shelve it. 6 months later, it reappears under a new name, this time as a leadership initiative. So I stayed quiet. I kept Freelink to myself. Some nights, I'd open it, tweak the layout, and add a small feature. No one knew. No one cared. But to me, it kept my mind alive. At work, every time I said I have an idea, they said, let's discuss later. Here, there was no later. One evening, Jess passed by my desk and saw the Freelink screen open. What's that? She asked. Something that helps people avoid losing $300,000 just because they forget to click save, I said. She laughed, thinking I was joking. I laughed too. Because in this company, truth always sounded like a punchline. 3 months later, that same bug appeared again in the audit report. This time, they actually hired a freelancer. Cost $22,000. Result: the bug was still there. The next day, Troy sent a company-wide email. This is a great example of our spirit of continuous improvement. I nearly choked on my coffee. Continuous improvement. What a nice slogan for people who never stop, even when they're going the wrong way. That night, I opened Freelink and added a note. April 17th. They hired someone to fix what I already fixed. It's still broken. I looked at that line and smiled softly. No anger left, just amusement. The company claimed to innovate, but feared anything new. They called themselves flexible, but only when dodging responsibility. And amid all that absurdity, Freelink kept growing, line by line, night after night, every time I fixed what the system refused to. The company labeled people like me as internal risks. I called it logic. When a system fails, ordinary people fix it. When an organization fails, ordinary people stay silent. I chose the first option. Once, Olivia asked me, "Aren't you afraid they'll find out?" I shrugged. What's scarier is never finding out what you're capable of. From that $300,000 bug, Freelink was born. Not because I wanted attention, but because I was tired of needing permission to do the right thing. A year later, when Troy signed the termination letter for job hunting, Freelink was ready. Not to be showcased, but to live. After 9 at night, the city seemed to fall silent. Emails stopped flashing, work messages went still. That was when I started my real job. My kitchen was my second office. My two cats, Lewis and Clark, curled up on the chairs like the laziest yet most loyal co-workers. A loaf of bread sat beside my coffee cup, and my keyboard carried a few butter stains, the traces of half-finished dinners, and long lines of code. I opened my laptop and watched the Freelink logo appear slowly on the screen. No time clock, no KPI report, just me, caffeine, and a few hundred unfinished lines of logic. I didn't use company resources, no borrowed data, no company server. I only used what they didn't pay me for, my time after 9 p.m. Some nights, while debugging, I caught myself thinking, if I can build this, who needs a marketing lead title? It sounded like a joke, but it was true. I started to understand that I never needed a title to do good work, only freedom from those who held me back. Titles were never goals. They were gold-plated chains. Beautiful, but still chains. I had worn one for 6 years, thinking it was an honor, only to realize it made me bow deeper every time I signed another unpaid overtime sheet. After 9 p.m., I didn't have to speak carefully, wait for budget approval, or ask permission to create. Here, it was just me and the screen saying, "Connection established, sync successful." Freelink was running. Not perfect, but alive, and in a world where people held weekly meetings just to review progress, something that actually worked already felt like a miracle. Some nights, while adding new functions, I thought, if Troy knew I was still working late, he'd be proud until he found out I wasn't working for him. I didn't feel guilty. If fixing a system's mistakes counted as betrayal, then the system had betrayed reason long before I did. The company said it innovated every day. I actually did, just not where they could see it. I didn't tell anyone, not even Olivia. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted Freelink to grow quietly, untouched by advice or strategy suggestions. I wanted it to be mine, undiluted by meetings. One night, after fixing the same bug for 2 days, I thought, if Troy were here, he'd say, let it handle it. Then I laughed and fixed it myself. 10 minutes later, the screen said, error fixed. No applause, no flowers, no praise, just the sound of a cat yawning and the clock blinking 3:17 in the morning. I took a sip of cold coffee and whispered, Freelink, we're alive. From that moment, every night pulled me a little further away from Harbor Point, not out of hate, but out of release. During the day at work, I wrote proposals asking for permission to act. At night at home, I just acted. I realized that what had kept me there for 6 years wasn't loyalty, it was fear. Fear that no one else would hire me, fear that no one would recognize me, fear of being forgotten. But once Freelink came to life, the fear disappeared. I realized the scariest thing wasn't being fired. It was not knowing who you are without your job. Each time the app ran smoother, I saw it more clearly. I didn't need a title. I needed capability. And that capability, I built it myself without asking for permission. One night, Lewis walked across the keyboard and accidentally pressed enter. Freelink ran a perfect test. I looked at the screen and smiled. Good job, Lewis. Time to release. I committed the first version to the cloud. No one knew. No one congratulated me. No flowers. But when the words appeared, deployment successful, I felt complete. All the good things in my life seemed to happen during the hours no one was watching. When others rested, I began. When the company closed its doors, I opened another. I didn't know where Freelink would go, but I knew one thing for sure. After 9 p.m., I was no longer an employee of Harbor Point. I was Emily Walker, the founder of my own future. The first Monday after I was fired, I woke up without any meeting alerts. No flood of emails, no Slack pings that made my heart jump, no one messaging me to check something real quick. Just the sound of my cats demanding breakfast and the smell of coffee from the machine the company had given me last Christmas. Funny, really. They gave me that coffee maker so I could stay up late working for them, then fired me for working for myself. I was about to open Netflix when the phone rang. Unknown number. Area code 408, San Jose. I hesitated for a moment, then picked up. Emily Walker, speaking. Eric Chen here. We met last year at the Seattle Marketing Expo. You showed me something, Freelink, right? My heart paused for a second. Eric Chen. Angel investor. A year ago, I had sent him an early demo of Freelink, just asking for feedback. He never replied. I thought he had forgotten. Yeah, that's me, I said, trying to sound casual. You still working on it? Kinda, I said, glancing around my kitchen. In my kitchen. He laughed. Perfect. That's how every billion-dollar idea starts. Got time for a quick call today? 15 minutes later, I was sitting in front of my laptop, propped on a stack of cookie boxes to get the camera angle right. Blazer on, hair tied up, pajama shorts covered in cartoon cats underneath. Freelink was open, the light from the screen reflecting on the face of an unemployed woman who suddenly looked a bit too busy to be unemployed. Eric joined the Zoom call with a friendly smile, the kind you see on people who've heard 100 startup pitches in their lifetime. Still building, huh? Still debugging, I said. But at least no one's telling me it's outside my job description anymore. He burst out laughing. I shared the Freelink demo, a clean dashboard, a few mock charts, and a simple interface. It's a lightweight contract management tool, I explained, for small teams that don't need a full legal department. It tracks renewals, flags revenue gaps, and integrates with Stripe and HubSpot. He nodded, taking notes quietly. I continued. I built it because my last company lost over $300,000 due to bad data. They said fixing it wasn't my job, so I made it my job. A pause. Then Eric smiled. You know what I love about founders like you? You didn't build this for fame. You built it because incompetence pissed you off. Pretty accurate, I said. We talked for almost 40 minutes. I walked him through the beta, the roadmap, the target customers, all from my cramped kitchen, with my third cup of coffee for the day. By the end, Eric leaned back, folded his arms, and gave that look investors have right before they make a decision. All right, he said, calm but firm. We're in. Let's do this. I blinked. Wait, seriously? I'll start with 50K for pre-seed, get incorporated, set up Stripe, and my assistant will send the details. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. A week ago, I'd been sitting in an office being told my contract was terminated. Now I was signing a new one, with myself. I laughed, half in disbelief, half in joy. Freelink, the project born in my kitchen after 9 p.m., now had funding. No champagne, no cheering team, just the sound of a cat scratching a chair while I sat there in pajama shorts. Eric, I said, should I at least put on real pants for this? Nah, he laughed. If it works from the waist up, it's startup ready. After the Zoom call ended, I sat still for a while. Sunlight came through the window, hitting the termination envelope still sitting on the table. A week ago, it was a verdict. Now, it was just an outdated piece of paper. I took off my blazer, loosened my shirt, and let out a long breath. The feeling wasn't excitement, it was relief. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't have to prove my worth to anyone. Lewis jumped onto the table, his tail brushing the keyboard, nearly sending an email that said, "Thank you, Eric." I patted his head and whispered, "Easy there, co-founder." I opened the old planning document. The first line I had ever written was still there, faint from too many font changes. Freelink exists because people deserve better tools and better bosses. I smiled. I used to think that was just a personal motto. Now it was a business philosophy. That evening, I called Olivia. "You won't believe this," I said. "Don't tell me you hacked your old company again." "No. Someone just invested in Freelink." Silence. "What?" "Yeah. 50K pre-seed. This kitchen just became the company headquarters." Olivia screamed. "You got fired less than a week ago." "Exactly," I said. "But I never really quit. I just changed companies, to my own." She was quiet for a moment, then laughed softly. "I guess that makes you CEO now." "No," I said, looking at the open laptop screen. "It just means I finally get to work with someone I trust." That night, I opened Eric's follow-up email. Subject: Next steps, Freelink. Below his signature was a handwritten note. "Let's build something that doesn't need permission." I stared at that line for a long time. I wasn't emotional, just struck by how perfectly it summed up what I'd been waiting to hear for 6 years. That I didn't need anyone's permission to build something better. I opened Freelink again. The cursor blinked, waiting for the next command. This time, it wasn't just code, it was the future. I was fired for job hunting. But the truth was, I wasn't looking for a job. I was starting a company. Thursday morning, 7:12. The phone buzzed. On the screen, the name Troy Mitchell appeared. I let it ring 3 times, just long enough for him to understand that not everyone still dances to his tune. "Emily!" His voice came through, dry and clipped like an attached PDF. "You have used Harbor Point's intellectual property to develop a competing product. This is a breach of contract. Do you understand the consequences?" I looked at my coffee cup and replied calmly. "Everything was built after hours, using personal equipment. Everything is built outside company hours, with private devices. You may consult your legal team." Silence for a few seconds. I could almost picture him straightening up, trying to redraw the outline of his authority in his head. "We have evidence you sent a pitch deck while still employed," he said. Saturday night. Personal email. No content related to Harbor Point. I stirred my coffee. "If you need, my attorney can verify it through device logs. You don't want to make this any bigger than it already is." "I'm trying not to," I said. "I suggest you do the same." Click. Call ended. A minute later, an email arrived. Subject line: Urgent. IP violation notice. Same old PDF, typos and all, stitched together from the 2017 contract. I skimmed until I reached the familiar sentence: "All ideas created within the scope of work belong to the company." Scope of work flashed like a neon sign. I replied simply: "Dear Troy, development occurred outside employment hours, using no company resources. Product scope is unrelated to prior role. Please direct further correspondence to my counsel. Best, Emily Walker, founder, Freelink. Send. Done." One click, and 6 years of silence finally had a voice. That afternoon, Eric texted me. Got an anonymous email in the investor inbox. Warning about IP risks. Forwarding to you. I opened the file. The writing style was unmistakable. The ink smell of Troy's ego mixed with the recycled confidence of someone who copy-pasted clauses without reading them. I sent back 3 screenshots showing commit logs, file timestamps, and one short line. All work after 9 p.m. using personal devices. Harbor Point ignored this bug for 3 months. I fixed it. Eric replied almost instantly. Understood. Keep building. I'll handle the noise. For 6 years, I'd been told not to go beyond the scope. Today, for the first time, someone told me to go ahead. That evening, Troy called again. His voice was lower, forcing politeness. If you sign a document transferring the idea, the company will consider symbolic compensation. In return, you stop developing Freelink. How symbolic? A fair amount. I prefer numbers over adjectives. Here's mine. No. His tone hardened. Are you aiming for a lawsuit? I'm aiming to build a product. The lawsuit part, that's your scope of work. I heard a pen tapping, papers rustling. He was probably searching for a clause to save himself, but the 2017 contract didn't cover wounded pride. Finally, he said slow and tight, Emily, you don't want to be a bad example. Employers notice disloyal people. I'm not job hunting, Troy. This time, real silence. Then the line clicked off. No goodbye, no final threat. Only the sound of coffee dripping steadily into the cup, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. The next morning, HR sent an email titled, Reminder of Post-Employment Obligations. Formal tone, meaningless content, full of phrases like company property, mutual cooperation, goodwill. I forwarded it to my lawyer with one sentence. Please respond in the only language they understand. Clauses. By noon, Eric forwarded me another email, this time from the investor fund responding to the anonymous sender. Based on the information provided, there is no legal basis for the claim. If no evidence can be presented, please cease further contact. Short, sharp, polite, and cold as ice. I read it and laughed quietly. Sometimes justice doesn't need fanfare. It just needs the right CC list. That night, I opened Freelink. A message appeared. System check passed. All modules are active. I added a line to the project log. Day X. Received an anonymous complaint. Result. All good. Continue building. Continue building. 3 simple words that sounded like a quiet victory anthem. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Heard you went solo. If Freelink has a beta, send me the link. I didn't know who it was, a former client. Maybe someone Troy once lectured. Whoever it was, word traveled faster than authority. 2 days later, another email arrived. Final notice. Same PDF, same Times New Roman font, same line about ideas created within the scope of work. I didn't finish reading. I just replied with the exact same words as before. Everything is built outside company hours, with private devices. You may consult your legal team. Send. Marked as complete. No extra words, no dramatic ending. I stood up and poured water into the small plant beside my desk, the only living thing that had survived the old office. The water ran cool into the soil. I thought of Troy, probably still digging through old contracts like a man searching for his former glory. But power, like expired milk, only gets harder to swallow the longer it sits. I opened the window. The breeze was soft. Freelink kept running. No permissions, no approvals. On the screen, a small message blinked. New user registered. I smiled. Troy would probably spend many sleepless nights before he understood that power doesn't disappear because someone takes it away. It disappears when people stop needing it. Austin in spring. The sky was so clear it almost convinced you the day would be ordinary. I sat backstage at the Tech Future Summit holding a badge that read, Emily Walker, Founder, Freelink. Below it, printed in smaller letters, Sponsored by Harbor Point. The name made me laugh. The universe really did have a sense of irony. No one writes satire better than reality. I opened the event brochure. The speaker list felt like a long-running joke. Troy Mitchell, CEO, Harbor Point. Topic: Innovation through accountability, which, translated, meant progress by blaming the right people. My own topic for the afternoon: building something when no one gives you permission. They clearly meant that as a dig, and I didn't plan to waste the opportunity. Troy went first. Gray suit, calculated smile, the rehearsed tone of a TED Talk, confident, hollow, polished. Behind him, the screen displayed the slide, introducing Connect Hub, the future of contract intelligence. I tilted my head slightly. If Freelink was a clean symphony, this was the offbeat remix version. And the worst part, it copied the idea so shamelessly, it no longer even pretended not to. I wasn't angry. I was entertained. It was like watching someone try to play me in a play they hadn't learned the lines for. The audience began to murmur. A woman in the third row leaned to her friend and whispered, "It looks exactly like Freelink." I said nothing. I didn't have to. The startup world has a long memory, and the internet never forgets. When he finished with his trademark line, Harbor Point always leads the way in innovation, I almost clapped. It takes a special kind of courage to lie in front of 100 people without blinking. But I stayed silent. Silence was the most elegant applause. 10 minutes later, it was my turn. The host introduced me with excitement in her voice. Please welcome the founder of Freelink, the platform that transformed how businesses handle contracts over the past year. The lights came up. I walked out. No slides, no effects. Just one line on the screen in white text over a black background. Build because no one else will. I spoke slowly, every word clear. I was fired for building something after hours, I said. That something is here today. The crowd laughed, not mockingly, but the kind of laughter that comes when people recognize truth. I kept it short, no embellishments. I told them how I found the bug, how I waited for the company to fix it, and how I started Freelink when the clock struck 9 p.m. No drama, no tears, just what happens when you stop asking for permission to do the right thing. I didn't start a company for revenge, I said. I just stopped waiting for approval. Applause erupted. In the front row, I caught a glimpse of Troy folding his arms, head slightly turned. The light caught his hair, just enough to reveal the tension in his jaw. I didn't look longer. The best way to face someone who once looked down on you is to act as if they're not even there. I ended with one final slide. Innovation doesn't start with a budget. It starts when someone gets tired of excuses. The hall was quiet for a few seconds, then exploded in applause. No prompts, no forced energy. The sound was raw, genuine, like life itself, saying thank you. I bowed slightly, thanked them, and walked off stage. No mic drop, just the perfect silence that follows a true story. Backstage, a reporter approached, smiling with that mix of warmth and sharpness only journalists have. Any comment on Connect Hub? I opened a water bottle. Good luck to them. Copying is easy. Understanding the problem is harder. She chuckled while taking notes. Can I quote that? Of course. But add this line, I said. I don't see it as competition. I see it as confirmation I'm going the right way. She laughed. That line's going viral. If it does, I said, that's fine by me. That night, when the hall was empty, I lingered for a while. The echo of applause still hung in the air beneath the high ceiling. Technicians were taking down the screens, lights dimming. A paper with Connect Hub printed across it blew into a corner. I looked at it, then walked away. No need to step on it. No need to pick it up. The most important thing had already been said. A day later, my talk was clipped and shared across the internet. Not because I spoke beautifully, but because I spoke truthfully. People kept sharing the final line. When no one can hold you back anymore, you've already won. I read that caption once, then closed my laptop. No feeling of triumph, no sense of revenge, just quiet, clean, calm, the kind that comes after a storm passes and leaves the air clearer. If someone asked me, how did it feel, seeing the man who once humiliated you sitting in the audience? I'd answer, it didn't feel like anything. I was too busy talking to people who actually listened. And if they asked, was it worth it? I'd smile, more than worth it. Because I didn't just free myself from a company, I freed myself from the need to prove anything to anyone but me. When I left the hall, Troy was still there, standing among the PR team, a smile fixed in place. I walked past without stopping, not out of contempt, but because it was over. My silence was the kindest goodbye I could give. Monday morning, exactly 1 year since the day I was fired. Same hour, different heartbeat. I brewed my coffee like every morning, only this time I didn't have to drink it inside someone else's conference room. The laptop was already open. Freelink's dashboard showed over 3,000 active customers. Not a miracle, just steady, something my old company never managed, no matter how loudly they shouted hypergrowth every quarter. I opened LinkedIn, typed a few words, paused, deleted, and wrote again. I was fired for building something bigger than my job title, and I still take that as a compliment. No tags, no hashtags, just a quiet sentence, like a pebble dropped into a still pond. Comments began to appear. No noise, just people who had been there writing. I know exactly how that feels. I read a few, then closed the page. I didn't write it to be acknowledged. I wrote it to remember. Freelink now had a small office in Austin, 9th floor, overlooking the river. The realtor said, "You know this floor used to belong to Harbor Point, right?" I smiled. "Good. Maybe the Wi-Fi's already set up." He laughed, not realizing it wasn't symbolic for me. I wasn't here to reclaim anything. I was here to work. On the first morning, I told the team, "We're not building this company to get revenge on anyone. We're building it to survive, and if we're lucky, to live well." They nodded. I looked around at their faces, developers, writers, and client leads. No slogans, no, we're a family talk, just quiet trust. And maybe that was what real culture looked like. Sometimes I still saw Troy Mitchell's name pop up in startup news. Harbor Point pivots to AI. I'd read it and feel nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. He didn't have to lose for me to win. Life isn't a scoreboard. One afternoon, Olivia called over FaceTime. "Have you seen it yet? You're in Forbes, Women in Tech." I laughed. "They didn't mistake me for someone else?" "No," she said. "You look amazing." White blazer, Apple CEO lighting. I looked down at my t-shirt and messy bun. "Close enough," I said. "So how does it feel, finally being recognized?" I took a sip of coffee. "Pretty much the same as before," I said. "Except now I don't need anyone's permission to do what I believe in." Olivia smiled. Grown woman energy. "No," I said, "just done proving myself." Freelink had 12 people now. We worked. We finished on time. Meetings never lasted more than 45 minutes. If someone had an idea, they tried it. If it failed, we called it a humane experiment. I'd remind them, if you ever think, "Why hasn't anyone built this yet? Just build it, but make sure you sleep." The room would laugh. That's when I realized peace wasn't the absence of pressure. It had space to breathe. One day, the company's inbox received an email. "I just got fired. Your story gave me the courage to start over. Thank you for surviving." I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, letting the words sink in slowly. Survival, it seemed, was contagious. When Freelink hit its first profit milestone, Eric, my COO, suggested selling 30% to an investment fund. I thought about it for 3 days, then agreed. Not for the money, because I finally understood that keeping everything to yourself isn't a strength. It's fear wearing pride as a mask. When the lawyer read out the clauses, I sat quietly. For the first time, I knew exactly what I was signing and why. That night, I got home late. The apartment was small, the desk lamp still on. I opened my notebook and wrote a few lines. A year ago, I lost my job. Today, I have a career. And between those 2 points, the thing that changed wasn't opportunity, it was me. I closed the notebook. Outside, the city lights shimmered like a reflection of the sky. No victory music, just the steady hum of the air conditioner, the sound of someone who's stopped being afraid. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. One of the team had sent a photo of his dog with the caption, "Sick day, but still trying to debug from home." I replied, "Don't. Leave the code for tomorrow. The dog's more important." He answered with 10 heart emojis. I smiled. Maybe this was how a company was supposed to work. a place where people were allowed to be human, not assets. Before the meeting, I looked at the Freelink logo on the glass wall. I thought of Troy and the word loyalty he once used like a dull knife. Now I knew loyalty doesn't belong to whoever pays you, it belongs to the best version of yourself. I opened my laptop and typed a final note, not for the public, just for me. Business isn't a place to get even, it's a place to survive, and then, if you're lucky, to live. I saved the file, closed the lid, and stood up. My footsteps echoed softly across the wooden floor. No applause, none needed. I just walked out of the room, calm, free, and very much alive. I don't write blogs as often anymore. Running Freelink fills my days. Between meetings, contracts, and the flood of ideas my team drops into Slack at 11 at night. But today, for some reason, I opened the old Notion page, the one simply titled, Things I Wish Someone Had Told Me Sooner. And I began to write. To those quietly doing more than what's in your job description, I typed the first line, then paused. Not to find inspiration, but to remember that feeling, the one where you work late not for KPI, but because you know it needs to be done. No one asked you to, no one will thank you. You still do it anyway. I remembered the version of myself from 6 years ago, the one who stayed late to write a few extra lines of code, fixing a bug that wasn't part of her job description. I remembered sending suggestion emails that got nothing more than a thumbs up emoji, no reply, no response. And I remembered being called into a meeting to hear, "Thank you for coming early. Makes it easier to fire you." Sometimes, to be free, you have to be pushed out of the place that once felt safe. I wasn't writing this to tell people to quit their jobs or burn bridges. The opposite, actually. I was writing because I know how many people are standing at that thin line between loyalty and self respect. You want to stay, but you also want to grow. You believe in the company's mission, but you're starting to realize that mission no longer includes you. If you're there right now, you're not alone. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, someone would notice. The truth is, sometimes no one will. And that's okay, because the magic of quietly doing more than your job description is that you're training for your next version, not for your next performance review. You're building the foundation for what people later call opportunity. If you're quietly building something, keep going. Maybe no one sees it, but you will. I stopped there. The sentence came out naturally, without effort. I knew it because I had lived it, worked, failed, been laughed at. And then one day, the thing no one saw ended up saving me from living smaller than I was meant to. I kept writing, not long, just real. About the morning, I got my termination letter. In the afternoon, I registered the Freelink domain. About the night, I stayed up until 3 fixing a broken script, and my cat jumped on the keyboard, accidentally pressing a shortcut that saved the entire file. Small things. Honest things. No life-changing moments. Just a lot of nights when I didn't give up. After posting, I shut the laptop and made tea. 10 minutes later, the notifications started appearing, comment after comment. Someone wrote, "I'm in that exact place right now. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Another said, "I've been studying UX design after work. Now I know why." And one simply read, "I see it now. I read each one. No likes, no replies. Just read." Because sometimes silence is the purest form of respect for those still trying. That evening, Olivia called. "Your blog's everywhere on LinkedIn. Everyone's tagging Freelink." I laughed. "Good, but I don't want it to be a motivational campaign. I just want someone out there, exhausted, to know they're not crazy." "Still you," she said, honest and kind. A week later, we were interviewing a new hire. A young woman came in, tidy resume, a nervous look. When I asked why she left her last job, she sighed. "I got fired. My boss found out I was taking UX design classes at night. They said I wasn't fully committed." I was silent for a few seconds, staring at her. It was like seeing myself 6 years ago. So clearly it almost hurt. "Welcome aboard," I said softly. "Here, if you learn something new, we call that growth, not betrayal." She laughed, tears slipping out before she could stop them. I laughed too. Not out of pity, but because I realized some circles really do close at the right time. That night, I added one short post to the blog. If anyone ever tells you you're overstepping your role, smile. Boundaries exist to be expanded, not to keep you still. And I ended with a quiet note to whoever was reading, and to my younger self too. Don't rush to quit. Don't rush to rebel. Just keep working, learning, and trying, even if no one's watching. Because when the old door finally closes, you won't be starting from zero. You'll start from experience, from habit, and from the belief that you've done it before. The next morning, an email arrived. The blog hit 1 million views, over 40,000 shares. I shrugged and took a sip of coffee. Not proud, exactly. Just grateful that my words reached a few people, those still caught between passion and duty, between a private dream and a stable paycheck. I opened the draft video my marketing team had prepared, a recap of the Freelink journey for anyone who wanted to follow along. I looked into the camera, smiled, and said the closing line. If you've ever been called disloyal just for wanting to grow beyond your role, welcome. You're on the right track. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe. I promise to keep it real. And no dramatic background music. The screen went dark. The office was quiet. I leaned back, watching the Freelink logo reflect faintly in the black monitor. No more Troy. No more Harbor Point. No more job descriptions. Just me, and everyone out there quietly building something bigger than their assigned limits. And if you're one of them, sitting in your kitchen, late at night, typing the first lines of your own idea, know this. Someone once did the same and survived just fine.